Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We have a new video here from CNBC talking about why so many young adults are still living with their parents. Let's go ahead and see what they're talking about.
About 1 in 3 Americans between 18 and 34 years old live with their parents.
And while you may have heard more about this recently, this trend isn't new.
Between 2005 and 2015, the share just grew very steeply over this 10-year.
18 to 34-year-olds living with their parents, men, women, and both. Okay, so obviously it was more men than women this whole time, I guess. Okay, but both is right there in the middle. Understandable, but we're shooting up from about 30% to almost 32 to 34%. Looks like it peaked in 2020. Makes a lot of sense at 34% for both women and men. And we are trending up towards 36 to 38%. This is wild.
Period. Since then, it's been fairly stable. There was an uptick, of course, during the pandemic. In the wake of the pandemic, those rates of parental co-residence are now about where they were right before. Part of the reason we see this escalation of young adults not leaving the nest or returning to the nest is this idea that it was harder and harder for them to weather shocks.
Nearly 30% of Gen Z said they would like to save but don't make enough money. And
30% of Gen Z said they would like to save but don't make enough money. Let's see.
Shocks.
Nearly 30% of Gen Z said they would like to save but don't make enough money.
Interesting. When was this study done? Oh, this was Bank of America for State of Gen Z's Financial Health 2024. Okay, this is recent. Okay. There's a reason why Gen Z doesn't feel like they can save even though they would like to. It's because they haven't subscribed to the channel, liked this video, and taken a look into the description to see how they can join the academy, learning how to pay themselves first. Shameless plug.
Money. And roughly 2 in 5 millennials and Gen Z adults feel it's harder to build financial wealth now than when their parents were.
2 in 5 feel like it's harder to build financial wealth now than when their parents were at their age. Yeah, because the value of the dollar is dropping day by day by day. They took us off the gold standard in 71. We are now playing around with fiat money. If you don't know what fiat money is, look at any cash dollar that you have in your pocket. It's going to say Federal Reserve note. What is a note? Car note, house note. It's debt. They pay you in debt now. Oh my goodness, exactly true.
For their age because of the economy. 27-year-old Victoria Franklin has been living with her mother in New Jersey since she graduated college in 2019.
I saw all of the money that I was saving, and I thought maybe I should stay home for a little bit, and I didn't feel an urgency to move out.
Not everyone is enthusiastic about this trend.
You guys are making 6 figures together. You can't tell me you can't afford a house. They just don't want to spend their money.
Told ya. 36% of Americans said in a 2022 survey that more young adults living with their parents is bad for society. So here's why young Americans are choosing to live with their parents.
It's bad for society? Probably. It's bad for consumerism because they want you to go out and spend more money. But let's see.
And what the implications are for the U.S. economy.
My name is Victoria Franklin. I am 27 years old, and I live in my childhood home with my mother and my boyfriend.
Victoria graduated from the University of Miami in 2019 and moved in with her mom when she was looking for a job.
After I saw the cost of living and things like that after I graduated, that maybe I'd be home for about a year.
More than half of Gen Z adults say they don't make enough money to live the life they want due to high cost of living.
I ended up bartending and waitressing until October, where I got my first offer, so it did take a little bit longer than I expected. Currently live at the Jersey Shore, and I was commuting into New York City, which takes about 2 hours each way.
Ooh, a 4-hour commute each day. 4 hours of your life taken from the commute, 8 hours of your life taken from the job. You are now 12 hours deep just to get to and from. Wow. Yeah, see, this is why it's not going to work. And if that's just to pay for your cost of living, where's the living part?
And I thought, in 6 months or so, I'll move into the city, be closer to the job, and the pandemic threw a wrench in those plans.
Victoria now works a fully remote job, which she says she probably wouldn't have if it weren't for the pandemic. Without a commute to worry about, she was able to stay at her mom's for longer.
It's a lot harder for young people today to save up for, markers of the American dream than it was for previous generations. Part of the reason we see this escalation of young adults not leaving the nest or returning to the nest is this idea that it was harder and harder for them to weather shocks. And so, for example, if they suffered a layoff or they suffer some sort of health shock or they got in a car accident, if they didn't have any additional credit to weather that shock, they would end up moving back home. The financial stability of young adults, their ability to pay for things if they got into an emergency, was one of the big factors influencing whether or not they were living on their own or living with their parents.
A significant number of Gen Z adults and millennials lack emergency savings. In fact, 46% of millennials and 32% of Gen Z have more credit card debt than emergency savings.
This is a huge problem. Obviously, I don't have to say that. You know that. But we have to start working on fixing this by taking care and tackling bad debt. And we'll discuss it further on in this channel on how to take care of completely attacking your consumer debt. You want to have good debt. You'll understand what good debt and bad debt is eventually on this channel. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. But yes, this is terrible. If you find yourself digging a hole, the best advice I can give right here and right now is stop digging.
This can have ramifications for setting up a financial future.
Roughly 1 in 4 Gen Z adults say housing costs are one of the biggest challenges to financial success.
Boy, my parents bought their house in 2000 for $200,000. To buy the same house nowadays would probably cost like $700,000. So if you are a young family moving to the suburbs, which this is what that looks like in this video right here, whatever. Suburban home, boom, it's already tripled. Yes, it's hard to buy a house. My goodness.
The prices of homes has escalated over the last few decades much faster than actual incomes. So it is actually much harder for a millennial or a Gen Z to save up for a down payment to buy a home. And that's something that bears out in the data.
The pandemic did have a lot to do with it. I saw how much I was saving and I was like, maybe I shouldn't be paying, upwards of $3,000 a month and making somebody else richer when I could stay at home, save that money and spend it on where I want to spend it. Between my job and my bartending and waitressing, I make anywhere from $85,000 to $95,000 a year. I would say about 40 to 50% of my salary is going right into savings. My mentality is, why rent and give my money to someone else when I can start to own? And so a big chunk of that money is going to go towards a down payment on a house.
Young adults ages 25 to 34 in high cost of living areas are more likely to live with their parents. Nearly 26% of young adults in New Jersey were living with at least one of their parents in 2022. The median household income in Oceanport, New Jersey, where the Franklins live, was nearly $133,000 in 2022, while the median value of a home in the region was around $644,000.
My dad built this house for $350,000.
You see what we're saying? Like, look, and she's going to tell us how much it's worth now.
And was making probably $10,000 to $15,000 less than I was. My mom wasn't working at the time, and they were able to afford a $350,000 house on a $70,000 a year salary with a son. And that's not even the American dream anymore. That's not even possible.
Thank you. She may not know the value of the home, or it's not going to disclose the value of the home now, but it's almost impossible on a single income of $70K to purchase any type of home, because these homes are no longer $300,000. And even if you try to buy a $300,000 home, I don't know where you're living, but it's still going to be difficult because they're going to make sure that the standards to get the home is super, super high because they don't want you to default. So you're probably going to need 2 incomes to come together to then qualify for the home. So it becomes very difficult for the average 9-to-5 person to be able to achieve an American dream. That's why I said you have to stay asleep if you want the dream.
My aunt, who I fight with all the time, is always saying how you have to give somewhere, right? And my cousin said something to her the other day and said, we're giving everywhere. We don't get property. We don't get good school systems. Whatever we're trading off is too much to trade off.
Victoria had brought up some conflict with her aunt a few times.
Oh, this is my Aunt Judy.
Before they get into the conflict, here's the problem already. I can already assume where this is headed. Look, if you grew up the way she grew up, she's obviously living in her family's home. She grew up in a suburban household. This looks pretty nice, right? Middle class, we can call it. If you grew up like that, you and your parents only want better for their kids. So you assume that, okay, I'm going to live this type of lifestyle and or better when I grow up. They grow up and can't even afford to come close to the lifestyle that they were raised in. That creates a huge conflict because people don't necessarily want to downgrade, even if it's the right thing to do, because of where their standards have been set from how they've been raised.
So I asked Aunt Judy to come on over and talk to us.
I talked about how much we fight about millennials, yes, but millennials living at home, and how you always say, well, you have to sacrifice something, but how much we're sacrificing. Like, we don't get like a big property, or we don't get like a nice house, or it's not in a good school system.
But you have to start somewhere. You have to start anywhere. Just start your portfolio is what I told you. I don't care what it is. You don't have to live in Oceanport your first time.
No, but you were able to live in Oceanport the first time.
Okay, I guess it was different times.
Gen X and baby boomers may have
It was different times.
tougher time understanding what young adults are going through today because they enjoyed, until the pandemic recession hit, a solid almost 15 years of uninterrupted economic expansion. Baby boomers, Gen X, they weathered many economic downturns, including major recessions. But I think the big difference is that when they were starting to form their own households and starting to accumulate wealth, housing and higher ed were both more affordable relative to their incomes than they are now.
When I started out, I was making $35,000 a year. That was nothing. And he was making $35,000 a year. You guys are making six figures together. You can't tell me you can't afford a house. They just don't want to spend their money.
Told ya.
I'm sorry.
No, I don't know.
What you wanted? What was my first house? 250 maybe? 270?
That doesn't exist anymore. Where am I finding a $270,000
I'm
house?
not making $35,000 a year. Combined, we made 70.
In 1995, $70,000 was the equivalent of $145,000 today.
Yeah, look at that, see?
You want to know why in 1995, only 29 years ago from now, it's doubled? It's because the value of the dollar has decreased, not because the actual price of the home has inflated that high. Our spending power is going down every second of the day. And we'll describe that in a later video. Go ahead and subscribe.
We do also have a situation that what is really good for an individual person or an individual family is not necessarily good for the entire macroeconomy.
The Federal Reserve estimates in a 2019 paper that young adults who move out of their parents' house would spend around $13,000 more per year on things such as housing, food, and transportation.
One of the big boosts to consumer spending is when people form households. Whether you're a renter or a buyer, you need to furnish that house. You need to fix things up in the home to make it livable. You end up spending a lot of money during that time. So if the pace of household formation slows down, then that's going to slow down the pace of consumer spending, and that will produce a drag on the economy.
Another issue is that there aren't enough affordable properties in popular areas for younger people who are in entry-level jobs and making less money.
Any sort of housing policy needs to be multi-pronged. Are there homes that are at the price point of these prospective home buyers? What can we do to increase the housing supply? What can we do to build? What can we do to help elder Americans, to help them downsize and move into more right-sized homes that will open up larger homes for young families? So I think one alone is not really going to do it. We've got to look both at demand as well as supply.
The other major factor here is how much student loan debt young Americans have. 59% of U.S. adults say they've delayed financial milestones because of their student debt.
I do have a student loan payment. It's about $480 a month.
Student loans are ridiculous and they're unforgivable. The government is here to bend us over. At least take us on a date first, please.
So that's my largest expense.
The liability could be worse for Black borrowers, who tend to have higher than average student loans.
What did she say? Black? Oh my goodness. Okay, wait, hold on.
Largest expense.
The liability could be worse for Black borrowers, who tend to have higher than average student loan debt and less wealth than white counterparts. Black and
Is that what they be calling people? Whoa.
Hispanic respondents were more likely to say that debt was holding them back from reaching financial milestones. Less than half of white respondents said the same.
The amount of debt young adults held also rose substantially between 2005 and 2014, during that period of strong escalation in that cohort living with their parents.
Aggregate student loans are such an enormous part of the economy now, and that's not a reflection of younger people making bad choices with their education. It's really a consequence in large part due to the fact that there's less public funding and going to college just is more expensive, which makes it even harder for even those college grads who are hoping to get earning more money as a result of their college degrees.
Student loan debt by itself can't explain the phenomenon, especially considering so many European countries with much less student loan debt have higher rates of young adults living with their parents.
24 out of 29 European countries had more 18 to 34-year-olds living with their parents in 2021 than the US. It was over 70% in Italy, Portugal, Greece, Serbia, and Croatia.
My boyfriend is...
Yeah, but people love their families in those countries, and it's more of a communal, family-centric, family-oriented type of community. So living with your parents in some of these other countries just doesn't mean what it means in the US. Like, they actually look down on you for doing that in the US versus in other countries.
Brazilian, and multi-generational homes are very common in almost everywhere else in the world, except in the United States. So I'm just taking a page of their playbook.
The Americans are probably the only people that they're not multi-generations in one house. And I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I think it's kind of nice. Why do we have to be so cold to push everybody out?
You know, there are a lot of cultures out there in which it is normal to live with your parents until you get married. And I don't think there's necessarily an economic explanation for that.
The Franklins would say in the US, it is the economy, but Victoria's mom is kind of okay with it.
Unfortunately, it is the economy and the world that we live in that just doesn't allow them to go live a comfortable life. So with them living here was no big deal. It's not really a problem. They're saving their money. Eventually they'll buy a house, and that works.
Shout out to CNB. Oh my gosh, shout out to CNBC for this video breakdown of the impending doom of being a millennial or in Gen Z. Once again, I'm a zillennial right there in 1995. So yeah, hope is being lost slowly but surely, but we will regain our power to control our financial future by not only learning the simple things that we'll describe on this channel, but also by taking action in controlling our financials, our finances. My good guys, I'm a little tired. I'm a little hungry, so I can't really talk right now. But hey, we will figure this out. Slowly but surely, we will figure this out by controlling our finances and having financial literacy and having financial education. They don't teach it in school. They don't teach it at work. And there's a real reason why only certain families understand this, because they teach it at the dinner table. It's the only place they teach financial literacy. So instead of having to be, lucky enough to be born in a family that has financial wherewithal, you can learn it right here, right now, and take care of you and your family in the future by understanding what you need to do. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you on the next one. Check the link in the description if you want to apply to an academy where you can learn everything you need to know about financial literacy. Thank you very much. I'm out.